Hello, students. This is part three of the 1920s and 1930s presentation. I'm going to focus on the decade of the 1930s, which is also known as the Dirty 30s. And I'm going to show you some photographs or primary resource pictures or documents from the Great Depression. And I have some brainstorm questions for you to answer. Here's a picture called The Migrant Mother. So take a look at that and discern and try to gain an understanding about what's going on and why she looks this way. Here's a picture of men in a line out front of a soup kitchen that says, "Free coffee and donuts for the unemployed." Let's take a look at that. Many people had common phrases during this time. Brother, can you spare a dime? Sister, run on a bread line or a bank. Happy days are here again. So I'm going to talk more about that in detail. Here's a picture of men looking for work. So pay attention to the signs they have around their neck. Here's a picture of a soup kitchen. Another picture. And this sign says, "Why can't you give my dad a job?" So children were also impacted by the Great Depression. And this is a picture of something called a Hooverville. And it was a shanty town made of cardboard, crates, and metal because people were homeless. And I'm going to tell you why later on it was given the name Hooverville. So you have three questions here. It says, based on these photographs, why do you think historians call the time period after the roaring 1920s the Great Depression? Number two, describe things that could be sad or disappointments in someone's life or your life if you lived back then. What could go wrong? Three, in what ways do you think the roaring 1920s is going to be different from the Great Depression? So pause the tape or pause the audio and answer those three questions. Give you some background of the Great Depression. Here's this gentleman. His name is Herbert Hoover. He was the 31st president of the United States from 1929 to 1933. I'm not going to read through this bio or information box about him. Like I said, he was 31st president of the United States. And he was the first president during the Great Depression, particularly the beginning of the Great Depression. And when we know that the Great Depression started, you've heard this before, that the stock market crashed and a lot of bad things happened. So Herbert Hoover tried to put together some programs and plans to attack the Great Depression, tax cuts, public works, and there's a dam called the Hoover Dam out west, and also to keep money in people's pockets, to keep people working. They also try to work with business leaders and to encourage them not to cut workers and cut their wages. But that wasn't good enough. So the election of 1932 came around, and people blamed Herbert Hoover for the Great Depressions and things that were not under his control. So a man named Franklin D. Roosevelt, who was governor of New York and who's on the dime, replaced him as president of the United States, and he beat him in a landslide. And because the Great Depression happened under Herbert Hoover first, people had some terms that weren't very pleasant, weren't really nice, because they blamed him for the Great Depression. Terms like Hooverville, which is what I showed you earlier, that shantytown, was a poor shantytown of rundown homes made of cardboard, metal, and crates. And that's where homeless people live because people lost their homes during the Great Depression. Lost their money on the stock market, businesses failed, people were laid off. And when you're laid off, you don't have money coming in, you don't have income. And you don't have the income to pay for your rent or your mortgage on your house. So it's foreclosed on and it's given up. So you have to move somewhere else and sometimes people moved to a Hooverville. Hoover blankets were terms for newspapers that homeless people slept under on benches during the Great Depression. And a Hoover ache is a term for someone who was sick or ill during the Great Depression. So many times, presidents are blamed for economic problems in the country. 9 times out of 10, it's not their fault and it's unfair. But Herbert Hoover is synonymous with a bad economy. So, give you a rundown of the causes of the Great Depression. There's 3 causes that you have to know about. There are many other reasons why the Great Depression happened, but these are the most important. The first thing was that the fact that people overspeculated on stocks using borrowed money that they could not repay when stock prices crashed. And stock means you own part of a company. You own a piece of a company. And when you profit, you earn a dividend. And I'm going to give you an example. For example, you get a loan from a bank to buy a car. You borrow $10,000 from the bank. Your payments for your car are $150 a month, which are installments. One day you lose your job. Now you don't have money to make your car payments. You can't make your car payments, so you have to give up your house to pay for the car. You're now homeless and broke. This is what happened when people borrowed money to buy stocks. People invested heavily in the stock market in the 1920s. People got rich. People thought the stock prices were going to go up and up and up, and they were going to get wealthy and get rich and live high on the hog. But people panicked, and stock prices started to drop and drop and drop. And bam, Black Tuesday happened, and that's considered the start or the signal of the Great Depression when the stock market crashed. Another factor that caused the Great Depression was that the Federal Reserve failed to prevent the collapse of the banking system. And the Federal Reserve is the central bank of the United States. It issues currency, it sets rules for banks, and keeps money in circulation. Well, during this time, people panicked and withdrew all their money from the banks, and there was not enough money left over for other people. And the banks use your money that you put in the savings account or other types of investments to give loans to other people. And when a bank doesn't have money, other customers aren't going to have money. And that caused a snowball effect. And the Federal Reserve System couldn't keep that from happening. People rushed to banks and withdrew all their money. They panicked. They got scared. Now the Federal Reserve has rules in place to keep that from happening. It's prevented a Great Depression so far. A third factor that caused the Great Depression was that high tariffs discouraged international trade. And the Great Depression not only happened in the United States, it happened in Europe, happened in Asia, happened all over the world because many of the countries in the world are alliances with each other. We talked about that during World War I, and they're connected with each other. Businesses that people own in the United States are also overseas in other countries. And when one business falls in another country, another business is going to fall, and it's a domino effect. And when businesses go out of business, they have to lay off workers. They don't have enough money to pay their workers. They don't have enough money to create products and create services and provide resources. So that happened because of high tariffs. And over here it says that tariffs are taxes that countries place on goods that are shipped to and from other countries, exports and imports. These were very high, and other countries didn't want to trade. This hurt consumers, businesses, and people who had jobs worldwide. So countries impose taxes on goods coming to their country so they can have extra money for people to take stuff off of ships, take stuff off of trains, and send them to distribution in stores around the country. So tariffs or taxes on imports. When that's too high, other countries are like, hey, we ain't got time for that. We're not going to buy your goods. We're not going to buy your services that you send to us. And that's going to cause a cat and dog fight. And like I said, the Great Depression not only happened in the United States, but it happened worldwide. And also helped lead to World War II because Germany suffered during the Great Depression, and it led to the rise of Hitler. And what people do is when the economy is bad, people don't have a job, people don't have a home, or people don't have resources to take care of themselves, They blame the government and they want to turn to somebody, typically a new leader who's charismatic, to make things better so they can sing Happy Days Are Here Again. And that's what happened in Germany, and that's what happened in the United States. And people turned to this man that I'm going to show you next, and you've seen him before. Oops, getting ahead of myself. This talks about the impact of the Great Depression. It says these are the results of the Great Depression. A large number of banks and other businesses failed. 1/4 of workers were without jobs. So that's 25% of people didn't have a job. They're unemployed. 3, large numbers of people were hungry and homeless. That's why you had Hoovervilles. That's why you had soup kitchens. That's why you had bread lines. People trying to sell fancy cars for $100 when they're worth like $5,000. So people liquidated their goods and services that they had so they can get rid of it so they can have some money. And farmers' incomes fell to low levels. And this happened around World War I, and it continued into the Great Depression. Farmers' income levels fell because people didn't have the money to buy from farmers. This left a surplus or extra supply of crops and livestock. Farmers couldn't get people to buy their products, so they lowered their prices. Lowering their prices meant less money was coming in as income for farmers. I'm going to go back to large numbers of people were hungry and homeless. Again, people scrapped for food. People lived in Hoovervilles, which were shantytowns. And once again, they blamed it on President Hoover because they believed that he didn't have enough policies and programs to stop the Great Depression from getting worse. People said stuff like, "Brother, can you spare me a dime?" Homes were abandoned and foreclosed on. And going back to 1/4 of workers were unemployed or without jobs. There were long bread and soup lines, which I showed you earlier. A lot of people suffered starvation. And going back to number 1, a large number of banks and other businesses failed. Banks were closed and couldn't offer financial services to customers or businesses. So you're going to have to do some type of visual activity with this slide, talking about the 3 things that caused the Great Depression and the 4 results or the impact of the Great Depression. The impacts of the Great Depression are large number of banks and other businesses failed. 1/4 of workers were without jobs. Large number of people were hungry and homeless, and farmers' incomes fell to low levels. So people were mad at Herbert Hoover. He wasn't getting the job done. We need to throw this bum out of office. We need another president. Bang, bang, bang. You're out of there, guy. So they turned to this man right here. And his name is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 36th President of the United States. I'm going to talk about him later on, and also the programs that he came up with called the New Deal. I originally said that there are going to be 3 parts to this, but there's going to be a part 4. So thank you for listening. And by the way, this guy's on the dime, in case you didn't know. So thank you for listening, and peace.